Welcome to the Buddhist Study Center 2021 Summer Dharmathon, a new program featuring 10 Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii ministers speaking on the theme, Building Healthy Sanghas, Nurturing Empathy and Respect. This week-long Dharmathon features 2 speakers each evening. My name is Sharon Higuchi from the beautiful island of Maui, and I will be the host for the first half tonight. As you listen to the presentation, please go on the YouTube chat box and type questions for the question and answer portion following the presentation. I am honored this evening to introduce Reverend Blaine Higa, the resident minister of Kona Honganji Buddhist Temple. Reverend Higa is currently the chairperson for the Committee on Social Concerns of the Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii. He also serves on the board of the American Civil Liberties Union of Hawaii and Vibrant Hawaii. Reverend Blaine was born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii. Before entering the ministry, he spent over 17 years in state government and nonprofit fundraising. He holds a Master of Divinity from the Institute of Buddhist Studies with a focus on Shin Buddhist ministry and chaplaincy. He received Tokudo ordination and Kyoshi certification from the Jodo Shinshu Honganji Hub. We are very fortunate to have Reverend Blaine as our first guest speaker tonight. As a local minister willing to share his ideas on building healthy sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect, we look forward to listening carefully to his unique point of view. Reverend Blaine Higa, you may begin your presentation.
Thank you. So aloha, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for the third night of our summer Dharmathon. We have a wonderful opportunity to hear the Buddha's teachings from a variety of perspectives, exploring the theme of building healthy sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect. In our often chaotic world, it seems like empathy and respect are in short supply. We can feel this lack of empathy every time we turn on the TV or scroll through social media. We feel it in how people have responded or not responded to the most serious public health crisis of our lifetime. Back in September 2020, Scientific American ran an opinion piece entitled, "The US has an empathy deficit." And almost a year later, this headline seems even more true today. In Buddhism, we often describe the world we are living in as a burning house because we are trapped by the fires of old age, sickness, and death. We can also understand this burning house to mean the world where suffering exists. We know from our experience over the past several years that there is much suffering in our world. The world is burning quite literally in some places, like the Amazon rainforest, the wildfires that have ravaged the Western United States, and the brush fires we've had here on the Big Island. The world is also burning with the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance that have been the cause of so much suffering and pain. From the demonization of immigrants, to hate crimes against Asian Americans, to systemic racism and white supremacy, to an armed insurrection on our nation's capital. We find ourselves with so many fires to quench. I wish I could assure you that life will always be easy and that it will always go according to plan. However, the truth is that life will be often difficult and unpredictable. These past 17 months have been challenging, to say the least. But with Dharma as our guide, we thrived in the face of adversity because we learned how to adapt to our rapidly changing world and to deal with the daily fires in our lives. Buddhism teaches that suffering occurs when we cling to the notion of wanting life to be fixed and unchanging. However, despite this wish, the world is undergoing constant change, and we often have little control over what is happening. The ongoing pandemic has brought us face to face with the fundamental truth of impermanence and our limited nature. The Buddha taught that the secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, not to worry about the future, and not to anticipate troubles, but to live wisely and earnestly for the present. We have certainly come to know this teaching intimately as we journeyed through the chaos of the past year. Living through the pandemic has forced us to slow down and to take stock of our lives. We've had to focus on truly living the present moment mindfully, with compassion and grace for ourselves and others. We learn that we have an enormous capacity for kindness and that we are more resilient than we ever imagined. As we go through life, we discover that true growth and learning happens only when we are pushed to the edge of our comfort, that we learn the most from our struggles and our failures. The Buddha struggled for 6 years before sitting under the Bodhi tree to discover the truth within himself. Shinran Shonin, the founder of Jodo Shinshu, studied and practiced for 20 years before realizing his own limitations and how he was ultimately embraced by Amida Buddha's infinite love and compassion. When we perceive our challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles, we discover our inner strength and our ability to persevere and to thrive. It is in these moments of growth where empathy can be cultivated. This radical and continual shift in perspective is what the Zen teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, called having the beginner's mind. He said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. What he is asking us to do is to always keep an open mind, a mind that is spacious and not rigid or closed. This is fundamental to the Buddha's teachings, that we should always approach life with a sense of joyful wonder, mystery, and of course, empathy. The Dharma teaches us how to fully experience life in the here and now, that each moment is perfect and unrepeatable, that each new day is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to share. Each of us has a light within that needs to be kindled. And when we take the time to cultivate that internal light, we are able to share who we are and our gifts with the world. Every day is an opportunity to learn and to joyfully accept that we do not know everything, because not knowing is the door to true wisdom. Accepting our not knowing leads to humility and a sense of reverence for the gift of learning about ourselves and the world around us. This humility is the basis for empathy and for extending grace and compassion to others. In the parable of the blind men and the elephant, Shakyamuni Buddha shares a teaching on conflict and how limited our perspectives can be. In a time of great conflict between many teachers of different traditions and philosophies, the Buddha shared the following story. Once upon a time in the city of Shravasti, there lived a king. One day, the king instructed a servant to round up in one place a gathering of men who had been blind since birth. The blind men have been assembled, Your Majesty, the man said. The king further instructed him to introduce an elephant to this group of men, such that each could examine it for himself. This, sir, is an elephant, the servant said to each of the blind men in turn. But to the first, he presented the head of the elephant, to the second, the ear, and so in turn, to the rest of the blind men, he presented the tusk, the trunk, the body, foot, backside, tail, and tuft of the tail. At this point, the king approached the blind men and asked of each, "Tell me, sir, what is an elephant like?" Each answered according to his own experience, saying in turn that the elephant was like a water pot, a winnowing basket, a plowshare, a plow pole, a granary, a pillar, a mortar, a pestle, and a broom. These blind men then began to quarrel about the nature of the elephant, each one saying, "The elephant is like this, not like that. And the elephant is not like that, it is like this." Eventually, they came to blows and began striking one another with their fists. The king, who called them all together, sat back and watched the scene in a great amusement. What the king seemed to understand is that the extent to which views, beliefs, and opinions in people link directly to their very primitive instinct for defending what belongs to us and attacking what is regarded as belonging to others. Shakyamuni Buddha then concluded his teaching with the following verse. "Oh, how they cling and wrangle, some who claim for preacher and monk the honored name. For quarreling, each to his view they cling. Such folk see only one side of a thing." Very rarely are conflicts black and white. We know this to be true. It is natural that most issues in life are complex and that people will have different perspectives on them. It is also inevitable that most perspectives will derive from a limited range of experience and are unlikely to embrace the whole picture. This is where empathy offers us a way forward without rancor or hate. If the blind men were moved to touch a different part of the elephant, how would their perspective change? The Dharma teaches us how to see ourselves and life with clarity. Buddhism's emphasis on self-knowledge helps us to cultivate wisdom, which lessens our fear of the unknown. There are infinite worlds and possibilities in the gift of learning. However, we need to take the initiative to learn about ourselves and the world around us. Learning is a lifelong process that opens up endless avenues of discovery, adventure, and possibilities. Buddhism asks us to think critically and broadly, but it does not require us to become perfect. No one is perfect. However, what we are asked to do is to become true and real human beings, to always strive to live up to our fullest potential and to live our lives in service to others. Like in the Golden Chain, we will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, try to say pure and beautiful deeds, try to say pure and beautiful words. How many of us can say we do these things all the time? That is the point of being human. We are imperfect beings that are capable of such love, beauty, and compassion if we only try. And we should always be mindful of our capacity for the exact opposite, as we see so often in our world today. We are taught that we are the sum of our choices, and that whatever we do affects not only ourselves, but also those around us. That life is filled with beginnings and endings because it is constantly changing and evolving. That there are no perfect answers, but rather only better answers for the situations that we find ourselves in. We are also taught that no matter what good or bad happens in life, that there are lessons in each that allow us to grow as individuals. And ultimately, life should be lived without fear or hesitation, but with clear-eyed optimism and resolve. These are the universal and practical values that Buddhism teaches. We are loved and embraced just as we are. We have many guides and teachers who help us along the path toward becoming true and real human beings. We experience the power of gratitude and how when we take the time to be grateful for all the things that make our lives possible, we can do nothing else but to be blown away by the miracle of living and bow in deep appreciation. We learn to cultivate compassion for ourselves and for extending that compassion to others, making the world just a little bit better. We learn that all things are interconnected, that despite our perceived differences, we all share the same hopes, fears, and dreams for personal happiness and a more peaceful world. We often think of enlightenment as a singular religious experience. However, wisdom continually unfolds its compassion in our lives, revealing itself in the most ordinary of ways. The Reverend Kenryu Suji says, "Each day we experience the joys and sadness of life, and with each living experience, we come to a deeper understanding of the totality of life, its beauty and ugliness, success and failures, victories and defeats, birth and death. Every activity of life has absolute meaning. For every motion, however significant, is the enlightenment experience. Enlightenment is found in the earthly realms of suffering, hunger, instinct, conflict, human frailties, and pleasure. For the spiritually awakened person, enlightenment is here and now, amidst the trials and tribulations of human existence. So it was with the Buddha, Shinran Shonin, and all the other great religious leaders. Shakyamuni Buddha is considered the awakened one, not because he was some magical enlightened being, but rather because he was someone who practiced enlightened activity in all that he did. He could have kept the truth he discovered to himself, but instead he spent his entire life sharing the way out of suffering by humbly and sincerely living his spiritual values and insights. His life was his teaching and was the perfect expression of values in action. Too often we separate our spiritual values from everyday life. However, these values should be the foundation from where all of our actions derive. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about being mindful of our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, and how they can affect not only our lives, but the lives of others. We recite the Golden Chain and the Shinshu Pledge often, but how many of us strive to truly live these values daily? If everyone sincerely lived the values of their faith, can you imagine how amazing and beautiful life could be? Might this be a lesson for our troubled world today? At the heart of Shakyamuni's teachings are the lessons of suffering, impermanence, and interdependence. These truths form the basis for our spiritual worldview and of how we should be in the world. Not about how we should talk about being in the world, but how we should be in the world. Each person's suffering is real and unique, and we should cultivate a compassionate heart and extend loving kindness towards all beings equally, because we are all fellow travelers struggling to get by. Because we understand the truth of impermanence, we live our lives as if today is the first day and as if it might possibly be the last. If today was your last day on earth, how would you savor and cherish each moment? How would you treat those you love? How would you like to be remembered? Would you live with a sense of urgency and do all you can to make this world just a little bit better? And because we understand interdependence, we act from the knowledge that we are truly part of a larger whole, and must do all we can to support each other along this journey of life. We are not alone. And in this time of pandemic, we take responsibility by following health guidelines, getting vaccinated, and by simply wearing a mask for the sake of others. The Dharma teaches us how to become true and real human beings in this life. And in Shin Buddhism, we rely upon Amida Buddha's vow of compassion expressed as the name Namo Amida Butsu, working in our lives. I believe Amida's vow is also our vow, our highest aspiration in life. The Bodhisattva's aspiration to nourish and to liberate all beings is the ultimate example of how we should strive to live. This vow is our constant companion in life, our guide in life. The living vow takes root and flourishes in the very soil of our imperfect lives. In the Pure Land path, our ordinary daily life is our dojo, is our practice hall. There is a place of true learning that exists within each of us. This is where the seeds of the Dharma are planted, nurtured, and bloom. Isn't the living Dharma something we encounter every single day? And aren't we responsible for learning and for embodying the Buddha's teachings in all that we do? Recently, I read an article entitled 5 Habits to Heal the Heart of Democracy by the writer Parker Palmer, in which he explores the attitudes and efforts he thinks are needed within individuals and communities to strengthen American democracy. Palmer suggests that together we must value our differences, draw inspiration and greater understanding from contradictions, honor the voice and the will of the individual, and celebrate the power of community building in order to restore our democratic society. Palmer begins this article by quoting another writer by the name of Terry Tempest Williams, who said, "The human heart is the first home of democracy. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole being, not just our minds, and offer our attention rather than our opinions? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up ever, trusting our fellow citizens to join us in our determined pursuit of a living democracy?" It is within our hearts that democracy lives and thrives. What he suggests is that democracy is a way of being and engaging in the world, and is founded upon what he describes as the habits of the heart. The Dharma is also a way of being and engaging in the world because it also lives and thrives within our hearts. This is where empathy lives and resides. We are all living the life of a bodhisattva, one who aspires to Buddhahood and who is willing to service our communities, motivated by a deep faith in the three treasures of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I'm reminded of the last teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, in which he said, "The true Buddha is not a human body, it is enlightenment. A human body must die, but the wisdom of enlightenment will exist forever in the truth of the Dharma and in the practice of the Dharma. He who sees merely my body does not truly see me. Only he who accepts my teachings truly sees me. After my death, the Dharma shall be your teacher. Follow the Dharma, and you will be true to me." The Buddha teaches us by his example that enlightenment is dynamic activity, that each of us is the living embodiment of the Dharma in action, that each of us is in coming to understand enlightenment as an activity, reveals to us a world of endless learning, transformation, and growth. This is why Buddhism is a path of supreme optimism, in which no life and no experience is ever wasted. In these difficult times, we are so fortunate to be able to take refuge in the Buddha's teachings. With the Dharma as our guide, we can navigate the chaos of our lives with compassion, empathy, and grace. And as a Theravadan Buddhist nun by the name of Dhammadipa recently tweeted, "Putting the Dharma at the center of your life is putting kindness, strength, clarity, and dignity at the center of your life. That is true resilience." This is why in the homages, we take refuge in the three treasures. We go to the Buddha for guidance. May we always walk in the way that leads to enlightenment. We go to the Dharma for guidance. May we be submerged in the depth of the teachings and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. We go to the Sangha for guidance. May we all with one accord live a life of harmony in the spirit of oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. In Shin Buddhism, the goal is to awaken to the working of infinite wisdom and compassion, which is our true self. This is the heart of the Pure Land path taught to us by Shinran. This is the life of true entrusting, which transforms our hearts and minds, enabling us to live with the spirit of a bodhisattva. And so, as we reflect on the theme of nurturing empathy and respect, let's reflect on the promise of universal awakening and strive to put the Dharma at the very center of our lives. Mahalo for listening. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Thank you, Reverend Blaine, for articulating your ideas on the theme. Thank you for being so realistic, but also positive and inspiring. We will now have a question and answer session with questions from our listeners on YouTube. While we wait for the questions to come in, I have one question. Will nurturing empathy and respect lead to compassion? Is this the goal? Reverend Higa?
Well, I think, like I mentioned, I think the goal, right, is to become true and real, right, human beings, right? That's the Buddhist path, which, also necessitates or implies, right, how we should be in the world, how we should be living, right? How should we care for others, care for ourselves? And so I think ultimately, right, if we are living this path, and are true to the path, we can, be able to nurture compassion, nurture empathy, nurture the spirit of the bodhisattva, right, in our lives, to be able to live for self-benefit and benefiting of others, right? That this is a mutually benefiting path and a life that we're leading. So
Thank you very much, Reverend Lane. We have a question from an audience member. Can you please go over the 5 attitudes to strengthen America?
Okay,
The 5 attitudes to strengthen America.
Okay. So, right, so the 5 habits, right, I think that Parker Palmer explores in his article, right, is talking about these attitudes, right, and the efforts he thinks that are needed within individuals and communities to strengthen our democracy, right? So he says this, right, suggests that together we must value our differences, right, draw inspiration and greater understanding from our contradictions, honor the voice and the will of the individual, and to celebrate the power of community building in order to restore our democratic society, right? So all of these things together, right? He's asking us to think critically about how are we together as a community? How are we able to live with one another, right, in a diverse society, right? So he thinks that, right, he's pointing to, if we cultivate empathy for one another, if we cultivate, a mind of compassion for each other, because we share this life together, this journey together, this country together, right? Then we can strengthen democracy as a whole. So, right, and so if we think about the Dharma, right, in our lives, and how the Dharma works in our lives, it's just like that, right? This idea of it resides in our heart, right? Just like democracy does, right? It is an activity, right? So, which I think, I know Bishop Matsumoto just put a question in the chat about talking about enlightenment as an activity. So, right, so we think about enlightenment as an experience often, right? Or as a goal, right? To achieve, right? But enlightenment is also dynamic activity, right? Life, right? The working of wisdom and compassion, the working of Amida Buddha, how we understand that, right? Is that enlightenment is coming to us. Enlightenment is always working in our lives, both seen and unseen forces, right? And so in order to be able to live out this path, right, is to live out the activity of enlightenment, right, that is coming to us, right? In our tradition, we say the name of the Buddha, right, Namo Amida Butsu, in gratitude, right, for this dynamic working of wisdom and compassion, right? But also we are the living embodiment of this working of wisdom and compassion, right? We are the living embodiment, of this path in our very lives, right? In big and small ways, in the imperfect ways that we are able to live and to be together, to live compassionately, to live with empathy, to be able to make life just a little bit better for each other, because we are fellow travelers struggling to get by, because we are all right on the boat, right on the ship of the vow of the Buddha.
Thank you, Reverend Blaine. Going back to the question about our seeking enlightenment and the 5 habits to strengthen America, I was reminded about this portion of the book Strategies of Modern Living by Alfred Bloom. On pages 101, 102, he says, although differences and disagreement are generally considered undesirable in any group, both have a function in the life of a community. The function of clarifying and bringing to light the true meaning of the teaching on which that community is based. By sharing differences and acknowledging them, we may mutually expand our horizons and deepen our insights. My question to you is, in our temple setting, what are some formats that we could use to provide this type of sharing so that we can expand our horizon and deepen our insights when we have different points of view?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Like the parable, right, of the elephant and the blind man, each of us, right, has a perspective and is touching, right, one part of the truth. So we do know, right, from our experience, right, but what we understand too, right, is that we don't have the full picture. And I think if we can hold space, right, as Sangha, as a temple, as a community, for different perspectives, right, being a place, right, that we can share openly who we are, what we believe, what we understand, right, and that it can be a safe space for differing opinions, right, and different ways of understanding. Then can we be like the blind men and move around the elephant, right, to get a better picture, a more complete picture, right, of any situation, right? But that's hard though, right? That's the hardest thing that we find ourselves in our country, right, in our communities, right, is to be able to hold space and to offer an opportunity for people to bring their whole selves, right, and then to be able to share, because we want life to be a certain way. And what we have come to understand, right, in the past year and a half, is that life is not going to go our way. It hasn't gone our way. But yet we have the Dharma to help guide us, right, to offer us hope and a way of being and becoming that is more compassionate, that is more open, right, that helps to create a community of openness, and of discussion and of mutually supporting each other, right? So
Thank you, Reverend Blaine. Thank you, Reverend Blaine. There's a question about the golden chain of love, it says to think, to say, and to do pure and beautiful thoughts, words, and deeds. If we human beings have minds of distinction and not always perfect, how should I read it?
Right. The important word, right, in the golden chain is "I will try." Right. That to me gets to the heart of of being human. We will try. We have to try. We have no choice but to try. Right. And so even though, right, our limited human selves, right, we're going to fail, we're going to be imperfect, and that's okay. But coming to know and coming to truly accept that that's okay, right, allows us to try, allows us to move forward, right? Right. That to me is the optimism, the ultimate optimism that the Dharma offers, that the Buddhist path offers, is that no experience, no effort is ever wasted, right? That each of us within our lives is the embodiment, right, of the teachings. Whether we succeed or we fail, that's okay. But we continue trying, we continue living and doing and being compassion, right? Being.
Thank you, Reverend Blaine. I have a question here. In River of Fire, River of Water, by Taiketsu Uno, page 141, he quotes the Myokonin Ichitaro. True and trusting means that you're able to truly relate to another being, not only human beings, but with plants and animals. Even those things that cannot speak, you're able to hear their feelings. Namo Amida Butsu. What is your thoughts on true and trusting?
So thank you for that question. For me, right, coming to understand true and trusting, right, is the central religious experience, right, in Shin Buddhism. But for me, right, coming to understand true and trusting, right, is coming to be able to hear the working of wisdom and compassion in my life, right, in all its forms, right, from the people we encounter, right, to nature itself, right? Nature is speaking to us, right? So, there was a time I went to Yosemite National Park, and I got to visit the redwoods, this grove of redwoods, and to be able to step into the circle of trees, ancient trees. I could feel and hear like life, right? That there was a certain humming, that there was a certain music, right, in nature, that was powerful and ancient and timeless. You know, and when we work with families, right, and people who are facing, end of life, in those moments of caring for an individual, talking to someone, right, there is the working of wisdom and compassion present there, right, which embraces both myself and the person that I'm offering care to, right, that both of us are held within Amida's embrace. right? Sustained and supported. Um, and to trust in that moment, to trust in that relationship, right? That to me is true and trusting. To trust that experience of life that is beyond myself, beyond my limited being. That to me is this working of true and trusting. That we come to know, we come to hear, we come to experience the working of enlightenment in our lives.
Thank you, Reverend Lane. I can see how being in nature can nurture that feeling you have that we all strive for. Thank you very much. There's another question in another vein. What are some practical actions that temples can do to nurture empathy and respect? For example, should the temples encourage donations through charities? Should temples focus on interdependence with nature by being more green and etc.? What are some of your, maybe your temple or some other temples have done some actions to nurture empathy and respect?
Right, I think, right, first and foremost, right, Sangha, right, we're creating Sangha and we're cultivating Sangha. We're creating community and building community together, right? And the Dharma lives in community, right, is expressed through community and our actions and how we live. And so I think, right, the best way of sharing the Dharma, right, is through service, is through caring for Sangha. How are we together? How do we care for each other? You know, when the pandemic began, our temple here in Kona began a phone ministry program, you know, a Sangha phone ministry program where, you know, we broke up the list of our membership and we began calling members. I had a group of dedicated volunteers who got together and then they called, right? And just to check in with our members to see how they're doing, right? How are they holding up, right? Just to have that human connection, right? But along with that, right, was our temple decided to create food boxes for our members. And so as our volunteers were calling, they would ask members, would you like to receive a food box? Since, you know, during the early part of the pandemic, you know, it was difficult for people to get to the market and to get fresh food. So we were able to do this about maybe 6 times to offer a food box, you know, to our members and to care for our Sangha, to care for community, right? That is the living Dharma, right? That is the way we care for Sangha, right? Is to live our values, to share our values through service, through action, through doing, right? And people felt, you know, connected. People felt that they were part of something good, that they were nurtured and sustained, right? And that's the ultimate goal of Sangha, right? Is to help each other along the path, to be able to support each other as a fellow traveler, to struggle along. So, yeah.
Thank you, Reverend Wayne, for those. That's really great that your Sangha has been doing that and keeping the communications going during this shutdown period of COVID, which seems to be going on for a little while longer. Thank you so much for sharing. This leads to maybe one last question, which actually kind of duplicates what you've just been talking about. Again, in Alfred Bloom's book, Strategies for Modern Living, Shinran's outlook, quote, generated sensitivity to the needs of the other based on love and compassion. His religious philosophy was that, quote, religion becomes an influence to unite people rather than a barrier to separate and judge people, unquote. This leads to one, reducing judgmental attitudes in people. Two, allows people to follow their conscience. Three, reduces hypocrisy. And four, leads to the integration of a person and deep faith. Through your religious training, is this also your conclusion that this is one of Shinran's basic religious philosophy, that it's to unite people?
Yeah, thank you. For me, right, a true religious path, or an authentic religious path or a spiritual path, right, breaks our hearts open, right, to ourselves and to others, right? That the teachings help us to question, right, ourselves, help us to see ourselves in relationship to others and to the world around us, right? And that the path, right, opens up, right, within us, right, a transformation, right? A transformation occurs in our lives, ultimately, right? If we're living this path, we can do nothing else but to be affected by it and to be transformed by it, right? And for me, right, I think that's what Dr. Bloom is saying, right, is that, it allows us to become a little bit better, a little bit kinder, a little bit more empathetic. Not perfectly, not completely, right? But just a little bit more. Each and every day, can we reflect and respond and live? And I think that to me is the path, is living, right? Truly living as an authentic human being. That's gonna make mistakes, but that's also gonna be able to care for others and care for ourselves, right? Yeah. So I think that for me is the importance of the spiritual life and the spiritual path.
Thank you, Reverend Blaine, for speaking from your heart. It really comes through. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for attending this evening's Dharma session, first Dharma session for tonight. And we hope you gained some insight on the theme of building healthy sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect. After a short break, the second speaker will be introduced. Thank you.
Testing microphone 1, 2, 3. Testing the microphone 1, 2, 3. This should be the main camera and the main microphone.
Welcome back to the second session of tonight's Dharmathon. My name is Carol Valentine from Lahui Honganji on Kauai. I have the privilege of introducing Reverend Kerry Kiyohara for the second half of tonight's Dharmathon. As a reminder, there will be a question and answer session following his talk. Please feel free to add your questions in chat during the talk, and Reverend Kiyohara will answer as many as time allows. Reverend Kerry Kiyohara is the resident minister of Makawao Buddhist Temple on Maui, serving Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii. He was ordained in 2016, graduated Chiyo Bukkyo Gakuen Seminary in Kyoto, and was certified as a teacher of Buddha Dharma in 2018. Carrie previously worked as an executive, a consultant, and a writer in Los Angeles, Tokyo, Beijing, Shanghai, and Honolulu. Carrie graduated with BA and MBA degrees from the University of Southern California and speaks English, Japanese, basic Spanish, and survival Chinese. Carrie, however, is mystified by the kind Hawaiian Creole English, you know, pidgin. So without further ado, let's listen to Reverend Kiyohara.
Good evening. I hope everyone can hear me. Let me see if this iPad will. Let me see everybody else. Well, hopefully you can hear me. If not, Carrie Wong, I'm sure will let me know. Aloha, and thank you, Carol, for that wonderful introduction, which makes me sound like Superman, and that's because I wrote it. Thank you, Reverend Alan Urasaki, for letting me steal your joke. Let's begin by listening quietly to the teachings, to the wisdom of Shinran Shonin, the founder of Jodo Shinshu in the Honganji tradition. We've got a message from Reverend Kevin saying we can hear fine. That's excellent. So let's begin. When a person reaches the when a person realizes the mind of non-discrimination, that attainment is the state of regarding each being as one's only child. This is none other than Buddha nature. We will awaken to it upon reaching the land of peace. This is the wisdom of Shinran Shonin, which you can find in the Hymns of the Pure Land. This is Wasan number 92. Which you can find in the Collected Works of Shinran, Volume 1, on page 350. And if you don't have your own set, by the way, you can always contact the temple office here at Makuo Honganji. The cost is $50 for a 2-volume set, plus shipping, and we ship around the world. So, commercial is over. Thank you very much. So when I first encountered this wasan, this hymn, written by Shinran Shonin, I instantly thought, wow, this is the first Shinran quote that I can share on Facebook. On closer examination, however, maybe not. The mind of non-discrimination, or Byodoshin in Japanese, can also be translated as the mind of absolute equality. The metaphor of regarding each being as one's only child is universally appealing and easily understood. The explanation that this is none other than Buddha nature is also easy to understand. Now, the surprise comes in the last line. We will awaken to it on reaching the land of peace. Whoa, oh, bro, wait a minute. You're saying that first I have to die, go forth to be born in the Pure Land, and then, and only then, I realize Buddha nature, the mind of non-discrimination, and the state of regarding each being as one's only child. Oh, brah. And that is exactly what Shinran is saying. Shinran is saying it's not possible for human beings to realize the mind of non-discrimination because our ego self always gets in the way. It's not possible for human beings to regard each being as one's only child because, as human beings, we believe the world revolves around us. Mosquitoes. Don't you hate mosquitoes? It's not possible. Sorry, I seem to have lost the mouse. Oops. No, you don't want to do that. Okay. There we go. It's not possible for the average human being to realize their Buddha nature in this human body, with this human mind, and in this human life. But let's reread that last line. We will awaken to it on reaching the land of peace. Shinran is saying quite emphatically that we will reach the land of peace. We will go forth to birth in the Pure Land, where we will realize the mind of Amida, the mind of non-discrimination, and the heart of great compassion, and thus the state of regarding each being as one's only child, the realization of our Buddha nature. So the faith of Shinjin, the heart that entrusts in Amida's great love, the true cause of birth in the Pure Land, this comes to us just as we are. It embraces us just as we are and never abandons us. It assures our going forth to birth in the Pure Land, awakening to reality as it is, realizing the mind of non-discrimination, the mind of absolute equality, and opening the great heart of great love. The state where we become able to regard each being as one's only child. Namo Amida Butsu. And that's the end of the Dharma talk. Thank you very much. Oh, I can see Carrie Wong is saying, no, Carrie, we still have a few minutes to go. So I'll keep talking. But remember, never give the minister the microphone. So this evening, I'd like to explore the Honganji Hawaii theme and slogan. Growing healthy Sangha, nurturing empathy and respect from the perspectives of human reality versus Amida reality, or human Dharma versus Buddha Dharma. So using this framework, we'll explore the meaning of empathy and respect in the context of human Dharma and then Buddha Dharma, and why we must aspire to transcend empathy and respect and realize compassion and reverence for all life. The next, we'll address the question, what is Sangha? And perhaps more importantly, of more interest, why grow a Sangha, healthy or otherwise? Do we want to grow the Sangha because we need manpower for fundraising and bone dances? Or do we want to grow the Sangha because we cannot contain our joy and our gratitude for the assurance of birth in the Pure Land, thus becoming Buddha, and then returning in oneness with Amida to this world, this human realm of confusion and delusion, to help other people find their way to the Pure Land? So which is it? Why are we here? The existential question. Why are we here? Third, how do we grow a healthy Sangha? In the realm of human Dharma, human reality, we must deliberately and intently be more diverse, more inclusive, embracing all people just as they are, creating a diverse and inclusive Sangha temple community, a true rainbow ohana, is the strategy with the highest probability of success in Hawaii, the most racially, ethnically, linguistically, and culturally diverse state in the nation. As human beings, accepting the other just as they are is the most difficult of difficulties, which is why we tend to hope that somehow people like us will just simply walk in the front door. Confronted with our own biases, our own all too human weaknesses and limitations, we distract ourselves by debating, real world issues of declining membership, deteriorating temple finances, and our fear and anxieties about the future. In the realm of Amida reality, Buddha Dharma, all we have to do is just say it, Namo Amida Butsu, joyfully entrusting in the great love and compassion of Amida, which assures our going forth to birth in the Pure Land and our return to this world in oneness with Amida to guide others to their birth. How? The answer is always Namo Amida Butsu. So let's begin with empathy and respect, from the perspective of human Dharma and Buddha Dharma. So in the world of confusion and delusion, samsara, the realm of human Dharma, human reality, you can't talk about empathy without sympathy. So empathy, right? I feel your pain. Sympathy, I'm sorry that you're in pain. Now, the Western model, which is basically based on Judeo-Christian doctrine and values, like most of the English language, for example, is based on Judeo-Christian ideas and concepts and words. So in this sense, right, empathy, right, feeling someone else's pain leads to sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry you're in pain. Leads to pity. Right? I take pity on you. Leads to charity. I give you something because I can, so service to others. Pity, right? I take pity on you. Better you than me. Right? Charity, here, I can help you because I can. Ego, so that the ego, processes this as, I'm a good person, better than most, or I am better than you. And this is the realm of human dharma, or samsara in Sanskrit, the world of confusion and delusion. And this is not to say that Christian charity is a bad thing. No, quite to the contrary. It is absolutely human, the most idealistic human of enterprises in all respects. And I'm profoundly grateful for organizations like the Catholic Charities and other nonprofits, which aspire to help so many people, so many people. Now, the Buddhist model is different because it begins, in the realm of empathy and human dharma, but transcends pity and charity too. Right? Amida's mind of non-discrimination, the state of regarding each being, all living beings and all forms of life as one's only child. Amida's heart of great love vows to save all living beings and all forms of life through birth in the Pure Land, becoming Buddha, and thus breaking free of this human realm of confusion and delusion, breaking free of the cycle of birth and death, endless birth and death in the world of samsara, the world of confusion and delusion. So using the same construct as Buddhists, we must transcend sympathy, pity, and charity to realize compassion. So empathy, I feel your pain. Sympathy, I'm sorry you're in pain. Compassion, I am compelled to alleviate your pain. I am compelled to do something, anything, whatever I can do, the best I can do to alleviate your pain and suffering. So human reality, of course, means that there are limits on what I can do personally to alleviate the pain and suffering of all people everywhere around the clock. So what to do? The answer, of course, is always Namo Amida Butsu, entrusting in Amida's great love and great compassion to assure our birth in the Pure Land, becoming Buddha, and returning to this world in oneness with Amida to guide all sentient beings to birth in the Pure Land. As Shin Buddhists, we are awakened to our all too human limitations and weaknesses. We're not capable of saving every living being on our own self-power, as much as we would like to think we can. Our only hope then to save all beings is to go forth to birth in the Pure Land, becoming Buddha, and returning to this world of human confusion and delusion in oneness with Amida to guide others to their birth. And thus, we entrust in Amida's great love and great compassion, gratefully receiving the faith of Shinji, the entrusting heart. There's many ways to translate Shinji. And in the equation, from a non-ego perspective, right? I am less than or equal to you. I am less than. Right? At best, I'm equal to others. So let's explore the differences between respect and reverence for all life. So what is respect? Should be this one.
Stand up and show yourself. Watch out! Stay honest. Watch out! You know I got it. All my skin is for respect when you're home. When you're home.
Okay, I could play that all night, but I can see Carrie Wong going, oh no, Carrie Sensei, cut it off. I do think Aretha Franklin says it best, right? If you want respect, show me some respect. In American culture, then, respect is transactional, and you have to go first. Show me some respect if you want some respect. Now, this highlights a challenge for Shin Buddhism in America. How do we resolve the conflict between human reality and reality as it is? So Amida reality, Buddha, Dharma, reality as it is. So the truth of non-self, so the interdependence and interconnectedness of all life, shows us that this expectation of respect of me, right, which is really my ego, right, M-E, my ego, the respect of me this is an illusion because me is an illusion, right? My idea of who I am, myself, my ego self. So delusion created by my egocentric brain. My generation, the baby boomers, is of course the me generation. So no surprise, we've screwed up leadership of the nation. To my son and grandchildren, we screwed up. The realization of the truth of non-self transcends the demand for respect and leads to the awakening of reverence for all life, the reverence for all life. So this truth is intuitively obvious. So why is it so difficult? Mosquitoes, they're so inconvenient. Cockroach, okay. So what is Sangha? Why grow Sangha? In the realm of human reality at a very real level, we're obsessed with declining membership. So decline, do we want to grow the Sangha for fundraising? Because the temple exists for fundraising? Maybe. Because we need more manpower to continue doing things the way we've always done them. We need some free labor here. If this is the reason that we're trying to grow Sangha, then our temples are merely very poorly managed social clubs on the verge of bankruptcy, not Buddhist temples as a place of refuge from the chaos of the human realm, from human reality, right? From the human Dharma. Buddhist temples are a place of refuge. So why grow Sangha? Why grow Sangha? Is it because our sons and daughters do not find going to temple to be relevant to their lives, their lifestyles and preferences? Or is it because we secretly worry we have not received the faith of Shinjin? And somebody might actually ask us about that. Or is it because we've reached the stage of life where we truly realize the truth of impermanence applies to us, The truth of impermanence applies to me. The original meaning of Sangha would be Shakyamuni Buddha and his disciples, individuals who have renounced this world, given up everything, shaved their heads, and totally committed to living the life, right, the Buddhist path as a monk in a monastic setting, which, in modern terms, no sex, no drugs, no rock and roll. So later, Sangha came to include the supporters of the Buddha, and his disciples, so non-monks, lay people who gave food and water and clothes and whatever to the monks as an offering, in hopes of building virtue or building merit. Or the wealthy and powerful kings who opened their gardens to the Buddha and the Sangha, again, in hopes of gaining merit through their actions. In modern times, Sangha further evolves into communities of lay people with shared interest. For example, the Bukkyo Fujinkai, Buddhist Women's Association, began in the plantation era as when women banded together because they had common interests. They need to educate the children. We need a Japanese school. Right? The men need something to distract them because they're always getting drunk and getting into fights. So let's have them build a temple. And various activities, which today are kind of like the Japanese American Culture and Community Center. So the Japanese language school, Japanese arts, calligraphy, flower arranging, Japanese martial arts, the sports, right? Judo, karate, kendo, aikido, all of these things. And then, for example, for me growing up in Los Angeles in the 60s, Japanese American kid couldn't just go join a white troop. It was kind of unheard of. So the Japanese American temples, became the charter organizations for packs and troops. So the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts at the time, the scouting movement. And this is reflected, across the board. So the fact that we feel a need to grow the Sangha reflects our anxiety, our fear about the institution itself, right? So will I be the one to take responsibility for the closure of the temple that our honored ancestors and departed loved ones built? That doesn't sound very appealing. Now, in the realm of human dharma, human reality, temples, literally going bankrupt and closing is something we would like to avoid, obviously. And the choices available to temple leadership are pretty clear. In the realm of human dharma, an MBA would tell you, cut costs, increase revenues, or preferably both. So cut costs, increase revenues usually leads to the idea of, well, we need to grow membership. Really? Let me give you an example. $300, our dues here at Mako are $300 a year, which we pay to the Honganji mission of Hawaii. After the assessment that we pay, it leaves about $50 net. Okay, so if we get 100 new members at net, $50 each, $5,000. Well, that's not quite enough. How about 1,000 new members at net, $50 each, $50,000? Ooh, that's less than 1/3 the operating budget, our annual operating budget with a year 2 minister's salary. What happens 10 years from now when that minister is a year 12 salary? So we can cut costs. Let's see, lots of ideas. We can consolidate temples. We can reduce labor costs. Ministers, that would mean us. Repurpose assets to increase the return on investment. The return on assets. Dispose of assets for current cash. Let's sell something, get some cash. We can defund pension liabilities. Pre-2014 ministers, that refers to you. Increase revenues. We can build a Honganji Hawaii brand that appeals and targets a global audience. And by creating original content, we can build online communities and we can monetize those online communities. We can manage profit centers within our religious mission. Preschools, educational institutions, adult daycare centers, cemeteries, columbariums, and social hall. From tomorrow, you are a profit center and you will generate a profit. We need new product development like Taikyo perpetual memorial plans for families. For a very reasonable price of $25,000. You have a niche here at Makua Honganji forever, right? Every year there will be a family memorial service, officiated by the resident minister. And every day on the anniversary day of death, for your honored ancestors and departed loved ones, the priest will be reading the sutra in their memory. Taikyo refers to perpetual reading of sutra. Wouldn't you like to be remembered forever? Okay. We need new income streams. How about a Zoom convention service company that we charge us reasonable fees and we run it at our profit? And every Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii organization, affiliated organization, is required to use it. Here's a good one. How about Honganji Hawaii Hospice? Right? At the end of life, wouldn't you like to be in an environment, right, that's Honganji Hawaii? Now, these are obviously very difficult choices to make, and some of these ideas are kind of crazy. And it's even more difficult to implement by volunteers who have no particular expertise or experience in these areas. And to be really honest, let's be honest, you really don't want a minister with an MBA and the CEO's attitude running your temple, do you? So that's the human realm. What does the realm of Buddha Dharma teach us? So the truth of, the truth of all things that arise, the truth of impermanence, right? The truth that all things that arise from causes and conditions in the realm of human Dharma, they're not going to last, right? They're impermanent, always changing, and eventually come to an end. So that includes temples and all human organizations, which inevitably change. They never stay the same, and eventually cease to exist. So knowing this truth of impermanence, why then do we suffer in the sense of agonizing over how do we save the Honganji? experiencing anxiety, and this is very real anxiety, by the way, over temple financings, temple finances, or the need to increase annual membership dues, or simply asking people for help. Why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult? Because we're only human. Because we're only human, right? We want to leave behind a legacy for future generations. Because we are human, we have an attachment to a nostalgic past when our minds and bodies were younger, when the temple was the center of our lives. And because we're human, we want to do the right thing and do our very best to address the very real and serious issue of sanghas and temples at the end of life. Sanghas and temples at the end of life. Right? If we take this perspective, right, what does Shin Buddhism teach us? How do we apply the teachings to our lives today in this modern world of confusion and delusion that we live in? How do we, collectively and as individuals, simply be a compassionate presence at the end of life for Sangha and temples? Nenyo Shonin, the 8th Monshu, the chief priest of the Honganji in the 15th century, who is revered as the great restorer of the Honganji, right, which at the time faced declining membership, failing temples were closing, and a perceived irrelevance, right, of the teachings. Nenyo Shonin, right, offers this wisdom. The prosperity of this school does not lie in showing off with large gatherings. If even a single person gains Shinjin, this is a true sign of prosperity. The words of Renyo Shonin, the 8th Monshu, the chief priest of the Honganji, who's revered as the great restorer of the Honganji in the 15th century. And that's why Renyo Shonin gets his own altar space, right? As you're facing Amida on the left-hand side. So Nenyo's advice is to focus on Shinjin, right, which is the true cause of going forth to birth in the Pure Land, thus becoming Buddha. So Shinjin is the only metric for prosperity of Jodo Shinshu, of Shin Buddhism, of the Honganji. So historically speaking, what did Nenyo do to restore the Honganji? What can we learn from what Nenyo did in the 15th century? So, for example, free distribution of the 6-character name, in Japanese, Dokuji Myogo, as a principal object of reverence. So in other words, Nenyo Shonin was famous for any piece of paper, grabbing a brush and writing in kanji by hand, right? Namo Amida Butsu, and then giving this to lay people who didn't have access to a temple. So in other words, there's no need to go to a temple. No need for temples. So he encouraged laypersons to study and sing the Shaoshinga and the Wasans twice a day through the first ever mass printing and free distribution of the words of Shinran Shonin. In other words, Nenyo was using new technologies to communicate the teachings ever more widely. Nenyo encouraged lay people to gather together to study through the distribution of letters, which we call, in the Honganji tradition, we call Gobunsho, and it's called Ofumi, and Higashi Honganji side of things, the Otani side of things. Excuse me. And these letters were read aloud and discussed by groups of laypersons meeting in non-temple settings. And these quote-unquote co-discussion groups became the lay-centric core of the Honganji as we know it today, the Sangha. Nenyo Shonin instinctively knew that the strength of the faith of Shinjin and lay people was by far much more important than huge temples, elaborate ceremonies, and armies of priests performing rites and rituals. What can we learn from Nenyo's wisdom in the 15th century? 1, Sangha-centric organization over temple centricity. 2, laypersons equal the Sangha. Sangha equals the Honganji. The faith of Shinjin is the only measure of success. So these are 3 key principles that Nenyo used. And what happened? What kind of results did this did his strategy and his actions achieve? So Honganji, under Denyo's leadership, grew massively in the number of followers, wealth, influence, and temples, and eventually becomes the most dominant school of Buddhism in Japan. Honganji becomes so powerful, in fact, that the Tokugawa shogunate very cleverly engineers a split of the Honganji into west, so Nishi Honganji, and east, Higashi Honganji. That's an entirely different story, but ask your minister, it's really quite fascinating. So if we were to apply Denyo's strategy today, where does it lead us? Focus on the faith of Shinjin as the only measure of success. Move away from temple-centric thinking, institution-centric thinking. Empower the Sangha to grow. And so Denyo's advice is for us to focus on our religious mission first. We need to grow the Sangha to share the faith of Shinjin with all people without discrimination or judgment. This is the only measure of the prosperity of the Honganji in Hawaii. So the question then, got Shinjin? The question following this then is how? How do I get some Shinjin? When we look at this expression, ji, shin, kyo, nin, shin, that you must gratefully receive Shinjin first yourself, and then endeavor to share Shinjin with others. It's all about Shinjin. You must gratefully receive it, and then share it with others. The question, of course, is how, and the answer is always Namo Amida Butsu. So growing healthy Sangha begins with nurturing empathy and respect, cultivating the heart of compassion and the mind of reverence for all life, which blossoms into the great love and compassion of Amida, transforming our all too human hearts and minds as the faith of Shinjin. So to grow healthy Sangha in the realm of human reality, this samsara world of human confusion and delusion, we must first nurture our empathy and our respect for others. The first step in this journey, that is your unrepeatable life, begins beneath your feet. What are you going to do today? The essence of Shin Buddhism is the faith of Shinjin, the great love and compassion of Amida Buddha, embracing us just as we are, and awakening the heart of compassion and the mind of non-discrimination in us, just as we are, ensuring our birth in the Pure Land, just as we are. And in gratitude, we put our hands together in Gassho with the deepest respect. We bow our heads in reverence, and we say, Namo Amida Butsu, entrusting in all-embracing compassion and all-inclusive wisdom of Amida, working in our lives, assuring our going forth to birth in the Pure Land, becoming Buddha, and returning to this world in oneness with Amida to guide all sentient beings to birth in the Pure Land. Just say it, Namo Amida Butsu. And if that's a mouthful, well, okay, just say mahalo. So mahalo for listening this evening, and may your unrepeatable life be filled with aloha. Looks like I'm ending 5 minutes early. So I'm very happy to answer any questions in the time remaining. I would like to say mahalo to the tech crew and the production team for putting on the Dharmathon. Remarkable job. Otsukare-sama deshita. You are the honorable tired person. So questions. I don't have all the answers, but it's really hard for my ego self to shut up. So bring it on. I may need to switch cameras, by the way, because I can't see everything all at the same time. I'm going to go turn the sound on so I can at least hear, and then we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Mahalo.
Thank you, Reverend Kiyohara, for your talk. I hope you can hear me. I do have a couple of questions. But first I need to know if you can hear.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. One is about growing the Sangha. And if we grow the Sangha, obviously for more than just growing workers and their pocketbooks, what do you think, or what about activities that bring new people in by the back door, sports activities or things like that, even though they may not come to a Sunday service? What about having people come in our Sangha that way to start as a first meeting with us?
Okay, I think that's a very, very insightful question. Yes, it's difficult to answer. I mean, if you look at, again, in the human realm, right? Of course, these are all marketing tools, all marketing approaches which we can use. We can specifically target, audiences. We can analyze their interests. We can understand, what media they consume, how to get the message to them. We can start looking at their needs, wants, desires, right? And using a marketing approach to do these things. But by creating, let's say, a baseball team, or gee, we have that already. How about scouts? Well, this number of scouts seems to be declining a bit. How about 4-H? There's all kinds of different organizations that we do. So I have no problem with that. The temple is a place for the Sangha to build its own communities, in the sense of building a community, building Sangha. This is why temples exist. So there's no problems with that. But I believe, right, if we look at the Buddha Dharma, right, if we look at the teachings, right, we have to look at what Nenyo Shonin was saying. Right? It's all about Shinjin. Right? And if you don't personally, right, feel saved, this sense of liberation from yourself, we need to look at that first. And my mission, my job, my role as a minister is to focus on that. Now, as an MBA and as a former executive, of course, we can come up with elaborate plans to do all kinds of stuff. But why? But why? Okay. So
Okay.
says Reverend Kevin says questions are coming in, so bring them on.
Here is one that said, what are the characteristics or indications that someone has Shinjin beyond just saying Namo Amida Butsu?
Well, it's that is probably the key question, because and I struggled with this for a very, very long time. Do I have Shinjin or not? And if somebody asked me, "Oh, you got Shinjin? What's that like?" What would I say? And then Reverend Bert Sumikawa, who was my mentor at the Mo'ili'ili Honganji, and he helped me to understand Shinjin. It is easy to see Shinjin in other people, right? But almost it's impossible to see Shinjin in yourself. So this faith, right? So when I see, for example, on the average day, we'll have 2 or 3 people coming to the temple to make this big hedge all very neat. To mow the lawn. We have beautiful lawns here at Makawao Honganji, but you need to mow them twice a week, and people come out to do this. When we do fundraisers, somehow people, who don't come to Sunday service, they show up, at 4 o'clock in the morning and start making stuff so that we can sell them. This is how they support the temple. I do believe the Sunday service is the wrong measure. Sunday service, we've got to keep it in place. There's a lot. It is a comfort for so many people. And we need to keep it in place. But we also have to admit, right? So where's my son on a Sunday? This is the one day a week he's got family time. I would like to think the family would come to service, but that's not necessarily, the best introduction to Buddhism. Shinjin is a very personal, by definition, is a subjective experience. And I think we have to look at it that way. Shinran Shonin, right? One of the hardest words that I tried to figure out in Japanese was fukashigi, right? Not possible to express in words or even to conceptualize. This is Shinjin. This is the vow power. This is the depth of Amida's compassion and love, great compassion, way beyond human measure. Can only be experienced. You really can't explain it. So bringing people, I want to have, Mako Buddhist Temple being part of this community, and people are welcome to come. But it is through their exposure to the people who have received Shinjin. Why are these people so kind and gentle? Why are they so generous? They're really nice. What nice people. I want to be like that. I want to understand why they're such nice people. We can do this. Yeah. Any number of communities can spring up, within the temple. And by living the Dharma, by living the values, this becomes, a living temple. And I think that's what we need to aspire to.
Thank you. There's another question. Just saying Namo Amida Butsu sounds very much like the blind faith of other religions. How can realized faith be communicated well?
Well, it depends what you mean by realized faith, which, apparently came out of a textbook somewhere. Realized faith, I think, again, theologians need to address this comparative religion, study of comparative religion, the theological structure of Buddhism versus Christianity. In English language, it is always, right, the base of comparisons. The basis of comparison is always Christianity. So when people say, oh, that's just like Christianity, me being an unpleasant former executive, I say things like, well, you do realize that the Buddha lived 600 years before Jesus Christ. Draw your own conclusions, which is very rude, by the way. I mean, I know I shouldn't be doing that, but people like to come and challenge, that's just like Christianity. Other Buddhists come into the temple and they want to accuse us of being the Christian Buddhists. Okay. And again, this happened during Honen's time, during Shinran's time, during Nenyo's time, right? That, no, you have to shave your head and become a monk, right? No, you cannot eat meat, whatever the precepts may be. I believe that, the 84,000 gates to the Dharma that we refer to, Namo Amida Butsu is just one of them. How do we explain faith? Right? Blind faith. What other kinds of faith are there? Wide open, your eyes wide open faith. The kind of faith that I can explain to people so that they understand, that I can persuade them so that I am right. Thus, I am superior because I have spiritual understanding. It's a very American approach to things, to compare against Christianity. I think Christianity could be compared against Buddhism, and you'll find there's more commonality than differences.
Thank you very much. I have another question. You talked about empathy and respect for others. Can you kind of address, it's often difficult to sometimes have empathy or respect because of our own ego, because we don't want to get stepped on or whatever. How do we deal with our ego when we're trying to deal with other people, just in general?
Well, that, of course, is why we live in the realm of human reality, the world of confusion and delusion. Empathy. All human beings have empathy. If we see someone in pain, we know they're in pain. In a longer workshop, I put up photographs. Is this person sad or what? Right? Sad or happy? Right? In pain or what? How about this person? The visual cues. The human brain is wired to recognize pain in other humans and most animals too, right? So empathy. If you don't have empathy, right, you're a CEO or an MBA or something. They kind of pound that empathy stuff out of you. Respect. So looking at respect, the problem with respect is it's kind of like upwards. It's directional. right? If you look at reverence, this is reverence for all life. Everything is equal. There's no superiors or not. Show me respect. If you want to show me respect, right? You have to show me first. And I think that's the difficulty. The path in Jodo Shinshu is pretty straightforward. You become aware of the self. Right? You become aware of your ego self, and you begin to be able to step back and see your ego self in action. And you start saying, "Whoa, wait a minute, that's my ego talking. Maybe if I shut up for 2 seconds, the ego will stop like interrupting." And I could see, for example, both sides of a conflict with clarity. Not let my ego get in the way, not insist that I alone am right? But to truly try to see both sides. I may not understand this other person's side, but I respect, that person's right to have that opinion, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the current context, it's very difficult because everything is politically oriented. But I think this is, part of the difficulty. But it's not supposed to be easy, would be my simple answer. The ego always gets in the way. Here I am. I'm an ordained priest, right? I'm a temple minister. I wear the robes. I can go in the Naijin and do stuff. And yet I battle my ego every day. And I know, and Shinran's teachings, right? If you dig into Shinran's teachings, to the day I die, my ego will be dominating my thoughts, words, and actions. But being aware of it, I can step back, shut up, say, wait, that's my ego talking. Just again, Reverend Bert Sumikawa, right? Zip the lips, open the ears, close the mouth, open the ears. It was the best advice I ever received, to be a good minister. And good and bad. I mean, to be a minister, I just have to shut up and listen.
Are there any other questions? I'm just looking. I don't see any other questions right now. Carrie, do we want to wait for a couple of minutes and see?
Well, in that case, I have a question for the audience.
Go ahead.
If there was one slide that you wanted me to go back to, in today's presentation, which one is it and why? So somebody out there must say, what did that mean? Or what was that, what was that thing about? That's one place to start. So otherwise I could tell a joke. I could read a children's story. I could bring the hand puppets out.
I think one of the things that I would like, when you have the wisteria, it says just say mahalo, and you have that, and it's a rainbow colored. What was the inspiration for that specific, for making it a rainbow color?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this goes back to about, say, 2014, 2015 or so. And I was, my background is in advertising and marketing and writing, design, and part of my career was spent as a branding consultant. So how do we say Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii? It's a really kind of very long, and it's not a very good brand, right? So how do we say Honganji Hawaii? Well, the Sagari Fuji, of course, this is the crest of the Honganji. And then I started thinking, Hawaii. I got it. Rainbow shaved ice, man. This is going to be great. So I spent a lot of time taking pictures of rainbow shaved ice. I visited all these different, shaved ice places in Oahu, and I was taking pictures. It didn't work. It was like, it's just too weak or something wasn't right. So I called up a executive creative director friend of mine who works in advertising and said, dude, I got this design. This is the rationale, right? This is the symbol mark, the crest of our institution. And I wanted to say Hawaii, you know. And he says, Gary, easy. Hawaii, the rainbow state, right? It should be a rainbow. And it also works because then it, you know, goes like this. Perfect. You know, so he created this design using seven colors in a gradient. It is copyrighted, by the way, trademarked, you know, just like Just Say Mahalo is also a registered trademark. I very deliberately put the little circle R thing on there just to be funny, actually. So a lot of people say, you know, so no, it was actually just supposed to mean Hawaii. Now, from a Buddhist perspective, there is a good, you know, lesson here. What is a rainbow, right? It's all these different colors. But if each color is not allowed to shine in its own color, we don't have a rainbow. So it is individuals, right, shining in their own color, coming together to form the rainbow. And that was kind of my idea, right? And then as it became more popular and people started using it, people said, yo, gee, this is perfect for LGBTQTIA+. You know, and I go, oh, I never really thought of that, but yeah, sure, why not? Because from a doctrinal perspective, we must open our hearts and accept everyone just as they are. And to me, I think, you know, it's very fortunate that we have this, you know, this design, this symbol, that we live in the state of Hawaii. Again, the most, you know, racially, ethnically, linguistically, culturally diverse state in the Union, right? This is where we live. This is Hawaii, you know, and the rainbow, I hope, is who we aspire to be. I
Thank you,
see
Gary.
Reverend Kevin was saying we got like 2 minutes left.
Yes,
Let's squeeze in one
but
more.
however, we do have 2 questions.
Okay.
One, let me tell you both of them because you may be able to do them rapidly. Please summarize how your ideal Sangha members interact with each other. And the other one is, can you tell us the meaning of swatting the mosquitoes during your talk? I know we're supposed to figure it out on our own, but thanks in advance.
It's a Zen thing. So, yeah. So the most famous Zen question, of course, is what is the sound of one hand clapping? And my favorite answer is this. The Zen master goes, the thing about the mosquitoes, right? Respect for all life, reverence for all life. All life is interconnected. Right? All life is interdependent. Yeah, all life is equal to me, except these damn mosquitoes. God, right? So we will unthinkingly, instinctively kill, right? The first rule of Buddhism, don't kill. So what do? We create negative karma that has consequences forever and ever. Oh, cockroach, you know. Rats, hey, where's the rat poison, right? Because we're human beings, right? We do this. Ideal interaction between Sangha members, there is no ideal interaction. I tend to go back to the golden chain, right? I will try to be kind and gentle. There's actually a good basis for that in the larger sutra, the Tathagata of Immeasurable Life, the most important sutra. You will find, you know, the expression, you know, wagen aigo, so peaceful face, peaceful countenance, and loving words. Which I tend to tell people it's you know, essentially kind eyes and gentle words. Plantation culture, you know, lives on today, and there's this kind of this, you know, brusqueness or directness, which is valued in the plantation culture, but is not perhaps as welcoming or as easily adaptable to modern times. And we do this, you know, unconsciously. So I would say that if we're going to remember one thing in our interactions with Sangha members, it's not just sustaining members, it's everyone who shows up, you know, walks in the front door of the temple, that at a minimum, right, we can show them kind eyes and gentle words. So we could be kind and gentle to every living thing. If we do that, people will come. People will come. I see Reverend Kevin
Yes.
figuratively waving his hands and hey, time.
And
If there's more
so
questions, I'll stay on. But
it is 8:30 and it is time. But thank you, Reverend Kiyohara, for your talk and all of the questions and answers that we had. Thank you to everyone on YouTube for attending this evening's session of the Buddhist Study Center Dharmathon. We hope you enjoyed both of the sessions. If you have further questions, please direct them to the Buddhist Study Center. And there is the email right there, kwong@honpahai.org. That's the email. If you have any other questions that you think of after this is all over, which is what happens to me, they will be forwarded on to the ministers. Please be sure to come back to YouTube tomorrow for the Dharmathon sessions featuring Reverend Daido Baba and Reverend Miyako Majima, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. See you then. Aloha. Thank you all.
And we are offline, or I don't know what it is. We're off. We're good.
Oh, okay, we're not live because mine
We're
says.
not live. We're off
Okay.
air. There we go. That's what it is. We're off
Okay,
air.
there we go. Okay.